I'm one of the account managers and product specialists on the team here at 888 VoIP. I just want to first off say thank you, everyone, for taking time out of their day to meet with us today as we look to discuss the new conference phone series from Yealink, the CP920 and 960. Just to make sure you all can hear me, can I just get a couple chats back, just making sure I'm not talking to myself? See a couple hand raises, that's a good sign. All right, beautiful. So just a couple housekeeping notes before we get into the content here. If there are questions or anything comes to mind during the presentation, I do ask to sit on the question for the time being. We'll have a couple minutes towards the end here to get into some finer details. This event is blocked off for an hour. The slide deck should take about a half hour, so I believe we have a lot of time on the back end if we need it. Also, too, there is a chat function, so if there is something absolutely necessary or you want to put some information in there for later, by all means, let me know. At the end of the webinar, we will be doing a phone giveaway, as well as providing a free shipping code through 888 VoIP when buying a Yealink conference phone after the fact. So stick around to the end. And with that, I think we'll probably get started. Try and keep as much as possible to the timeline. So again, my name is Kyle. Thank you so much. I'll try and stick to the timeline as prescribed. And so let's begin. So first off, here's our agenda for today. Not a lot, but we do want to look at the CP960 and CP920 conference phones from Yealink with a little bit of context. That's what we're going to see when we take a look at some audio conferencing trends recently, but also for the future. And then we'll see how, as those trends develop, what the need for audio conferencing endpoint might look like. And we'll use that as a bridge to introduce the Yealink CP series of phones. We'll discuss their individual and solution benefits and features. And at the end, as I mentioned, we'll get you guys a promotion for free shipping and give away a single phone for your time today. All right, so we'll first start taking a look at a couple audio conferencing trends according to Frost & Sullivan in a report they did recently, taking a look at the audio conferencing endpoint market in general and out to 2020. So during their analysis, they were able to determine that the market space for tabletop and audio, VoIP-based audio endpoint conferencing is projected to grow at a combined annual growth rate of about 8% in terms of overall revenue over the next 5 years. They say that within this revenue, or within this growth, feature enhancements are going to be increasingly important as far as drivers for those future sales. And we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail coming up. And that new entrants into the IP desk phone market, including Yealink and some others, are going to be catalysts for that growth. And it's going to come back to, as we'll see, some of the feature enhancements that we're discussing today and the need of the customer based upon the working environments and as it changes going forward. So these are good, three good things to keep in mind, that the audio conferencing marketplace is going to grow, that is going to continue to evolve in the way that the customers address their needs for their product, and that relative newcomers to the industry and to the marketplace are going to have a role in driving the growth rate, because they're going to be the influencers. They're going to be willing to develop new products and meet the needs of the customer. A couple other drivers of the growth that we're looking to see here over the next 5 years are listed here. I think one of the most important is the second one, the increasing adoption of unified communications and collaboration software clients. I think from an IP phone and even a video conferencing standpoint, within the industry, we've seen some changes to more of a hybrid model of work, not just necessary telephony or video conferencing, but we're seeing an increased amount of app-related and software-related tools, such such as Skype or GoToMeeting, or even Slack and some of the file sharing and content sharing UCC tools. And then the bottom one is always going to be an important key here: the rising need for converged, low-cost audio and conference collaboration bundles. So, you could make, and these vendors can make, very high-end, very feature-rich, but also very expensive product, and it might not necessarily meet the need for a low-cost, feature-rich phone. So as the market develops, as the way in which we work develops, as the tools that we use and how we interact with each other changes, so shall the audio conferencing endpoint market, and thus drive some of the changes and some of the growth we're anticipating in the next 5 years. So at the end of the day, the question is, why do you need VoIP audio conferencing endpoints? And the simple, silly answer is that, well, businesses have conference rooms, right? And of course, that's a component of it. But when you peel back a couple layers and we think in the context of future changes to the workplace, the employee to technology dynamic, the employee to employee communication dynamic, we want to make sure that as we assess new products, we're keeping productivity in mind, so that if we are assessing products and new products come to market, there needs to be a guarantee of a good audio experience. So we need high productivity to come out of good audio, ease of use, and a noise-free focus. So no background noises, no door slamming, no paper shuffling to distract. We want to share information. We want to collaborate simply and effectively. But we also want to do it through a reliable medium. If we're going to deploy these endpoints and this hardware, and we're going to put forth the investment for this technology, we want to make sure there's a degree of reliability for the product. So not only is that from just the overall hardware standpoint, but it's the consistency of the voice clarity. It's the consistency of the phone always being available to you and not being defective or having any issues on the hardware. And it's making sure that the features are useful so that we can rely on this particular hardware to meet the goals and to do the job that we are setting forth to do. And then lastly, high flexibility. As we touched on in the last slide, the work environment, the technology, and the way in which we work is ever changing. So what works today might not work tomorrow. So if we're going to make investments in technology and hardware like this, over the long term, we have to make sure and feel comfortable with the fact that it might be used differently. So we have to feel comfortable knowing that this system and this hardware is flexible, that it can work in a variety of environments with a variety of types of tools, such as cell phones or PCs and laptops. That's why we see and will see some of the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi integration features, as well as the BYOD, or bring your own device integration, so that this conference phone not only is going to work as a conference phone, but can work with your laptop, can work with your cell phone, can work with your PC, and serve its purpose and its function in a variety of ways, ultimately maximizing the return on investment for the hardware. All right, so that was a lot to take in. Let's kind of digest that for a sec, understanding the point that the workplace is changing. IP endpoints, specifically conferencing endpoints, aren't going to go away anytime soon. So as we assess what we're going to do in the future, we want to look for a few things, some of which you already touched on, but a few of them we also want to look at in a different lens. So first and foremost, when analyzing your choices for the future to deploy audio endpoints, we want to first start by looking at the brand. I think this is probably a subconscious thing that people do already, but they first and foremost take a look and see who is the manufacturer, who's the vendor, what's their name, are they known to me, are they unknown to me, and then we'll do a little bit of a research around that. Secondly, and probably just as important and most likely tied to the brand name and brand recognition, is the quality. And we'll get into a couple data points here in the slide deck that touch on the quality of Yealink Yealink conferencing equipment and the Yealink brand overall. Thirdly, the feature set. The features that we look for in this technology and in this equipment obviously needs to meet the need, and it needs to be future-proof. And then lastly, the price. If it doesn't meet the price minimums or maximums, then it's, you know, it's a great theory, great concept, great solution, but it might not be the right solution for the customer at the time. So we're going to look at the Yealink conference phone series more or less through this lens, this four-tiered lens of what am I looking at and how did Yealink develop that product and what do they have in mind? All right, so we'll first start by taking a look at the Yealink brand. I'm sure most of you guys are at least aware of Yealink, otherwise you wouldn't be on the call today. But for those of you who are new to Yealink or maybe don't know some of their background, just wanted to touch on the fact that they're a 16-year industry, or a 16-year company that's been in the industry. They went public in 2017, so this past year, and they did so by way of one of the largest initial public offerings within China. So they had a very, very successful IPO last year. They have a large amount of R&D professionals, and they actually just built a nice brand new building in their corporate offices specifically for R&D. And they do a high degree of testing and standardized quality. So they make sure that the standards that they adhere to are globally known standards, are high standards, and they want to build a brand around the high standards, and that's what they've done and will continue to do. So this is the slide just to touch on a couple of the data points related to Yealink quality. The first thing that I want to draw your attention to is the first bullet point, a defect rate that is lower than 0.3%. As a distributor here at VoIP, we can attest to the fact that we do not have a lot of returns on Yealink equipment for defective issues. And that has been pervasive throughout their existence, not only on the conferencing side, but on the phone side and on the video conferencing side. They do make a very good product with a very, very low return rate. We touched on some of the standards that they consistently adhere to, but they also are not against collaborating to be better. On the T5 series of phones you may have seen previously, and also on the new CP series of phones, Yealink did collaborate with Harman to leverage their voice clarity and technology into the Yealink phones to ensure that level of consistent reliability and that level of consistent quality. And then as they released the product to the channel, they had some very good positive reviews. Here's just a couple in the Eurasia and the US markets. We'll touch on a couple more as we get through the slide deck as well. So overall, the standard was already set high by Yealink before they even decided to develop this product. And they were looking to collaborate to make the best possible product they could. And they wanted to get the product out there for initial release, and the beta testing went very, very well. And they use that as a platform to further develop and refine the solution. So without further ado, let's take a look at the individual conference phones from the Yealink family. First and foremost, we have the CP960 with wireless microphones. As you'll see, there are two small microphone pods that come as a part of the package with this CP960. We'll also discuss that in greater detail in a couple slides, but that's going to be the high end. The mid-range option is the CP960 without the wireless microphone pods. We'll see here that the pods are wireless. They have a DECT radio built in, and they come with a charging station, but are an optional upcharge. So if there is a particular need for a conference phone without the wireless microphones, or you just don't think it's a perfect fit or application, not to worry. And then working our way down the spectrum, we also have the CP920. So that's going to be your point of entry phone. It's going to be lower in cost and have a little bit different feature set, as we'll see, compared to the 920 and the 960. Or I'm sorry, the 960 with and without mic. So these two, the 960 with and without mic, were designed for mid to large size meeting rooms, with the latter, the 960, being a little bit better fit for a larger meeting space because of the fact it has these DECT microphone pods that do have a lot of coverage in between them. And then you have the CP960 that you still have 3 microphones and a single speaker to pick up a very wide range and radius of sound, but maybe not as much as you might need. And then you have the CP920. That's going to be, again, your point of entry conference phone, lower end conference phone, but more so designed for small to mid-sized meeting rooms. All right, so some of the feature breakouts of the CP960 are listed here. The biggest thing to touch on, or some of the more important things to touch on, is the fact that we saw the 2 wireless microphone pods. They are DECT. You have Um, 6 feet of radius per microphone pod of coverage that you can pick up, in addition to what is already coming from the base. The CP960 does run an Android operating system. It is version 5.1, and it runs it through a touchscreen interface. And by way of this Android OS, you can integrate third-party applications if you absolutely need to, such as GoToMeeting, such as your preferred IP-PBX vendor, as well as browsers such as Chrome or Firefox. It is a PoE device. It does not come with a power supply in the box. If you do need additional power or more power or don't have a PoE switch, not to worry, we can sell these with a PoE injector. The CP960 natively supports 5-way voice conferencing. So that would be 4 participants all dialing to a single extension or DID, and all hosted locally and managed locally on that single device. We'll see how they do that here in a moment. A neat feature of the CP960 is the fact that you can connect a PC or a laptop via micro USB and leverage whatever applications or soft phones you might have on that device through the CP960. So it becomes a much more flexible and usable product and can be used in a variety of scenarios, but it enhances the experience of maybe a web-based meeting. Instead of all having to sit around a small computer screen or a small laptop, you all can at least move into a conference room or a larger space, connect the CP960 by way of USB to that laptop, and let the laptop run the show or at least join the meeting, but know that you have quality coverage coming from your side and from your end from an audio perspective, because it's all going to be going through the CP960. Local call recording is supported by USB as well, so if there is particular information that needs to be saved for future reference, there is a USB port specifically for the call recording feature. Aside from that, some other standard features within the CP960 is built-in Wi-Fi and built-in Bluetooth. The noise-proof technology we'll get into a little bit more detail, but that is a standard feature across this platform as well. And you see that the CP960 without the microphone pods picks up 20 feet, 360 degrees around worth of voice pickup. Okay, well, we'll transition now to the CP920, and we'll take a look and see what differentiates that from the 960. So first and foremost, I think you all can see physically there's a slight difference in that there's not a a large color touchscreen like we saw on the 960. There is still a touchpad, keypad, but it is not the same layout and the same design as the 960. And one key differentiator is the fact that the CP920 can bridge analog and SIP connections if you have the adapter there. The CP910, I believe, is the model that will interface with an analog line, but also allow you to register the CP920 to an IP-PBX and thus mix or bridge the two if necessary. There are standard features, though, that transition from the 960 to the 920, such as the pickup radius and the HD voice technology, as well as the 5-way conferencing capability. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are also standard, along with call recording, but it does not run Android 5.1. It is a Linux-based phone, so it does not have some of the additional bells and whistles that the CP960 does from a UCC or a hybrid collaboration standpoint. But as we'll see, it also has a lower price. So I wanted to take a minute to just clarify and detail the Yealink noise-proof technology that they built into this platform. So what it does is essentially recognize the human voice wavelength versus a door shutting or papers being shuffled, and will allow the pass-through of the human voice, but will deny the pass-through of any sort of background noise. So that if there is that activity going on around the conference, it will be essentially dimmed out for the foreign participants, so they do not have to hear that. This is an automatic. There's nothing that you need to do to turn it on from a feature perspective within the phone. It is already pre-configured and built in and ready to roll. This is part of the technology they were able to develop with Harman. So we did briefly see this in the feature set of the CP960s, the pickup radius, but I do want to emphasize the point that the CP960 wireless microphone pods, they do add an additional 10 feet of coverage per pod. And because it is a DECT radio built in, you do get a pretty good degree of range between the base and the microphone pods. I wouldn't go more than probably 50 feet away. Just, I don't know who has a conference phone that big, but, or a conference room that big, but they are pretty powerful as far as coverage is concerned. So we had mentioned when looking at the CP960 and 920 that they support local multi-party conferencing. And we also saw at the outset that these devices are hybrid UCC, that they can do a mix of different types of connection. So how do you do that? How would one actually set up a conference call and do such? So we can see here this layout on the slide. This is taken from a CP960. This is not part of the CP920. But the CP960 gives you a single interface point to manage all of your connections, whether they're by IP, SIP, web, it doesn't matter. They're all managed from a single point so that you can add and subtract and manage as necessary without having to interrupt the call flow. So this is a very, very intuitive and simple layout. If we were to, let's say, have a 4-person meeting, let's take Elliot off of the meeting here. There would be a blank space where he is. We would select invite and choose our preferred method of communication, whether that's IP, DID, what have you. We would initialize our contact to that person or location. And then once that is established, they would then be moved into the open spot. Okay. Now, as the discussion works its way around, if there are foreign participants who need to interject something, there is active speaker technology within this layout to identify who and where is speaking. This is a pretty neat update. So we touched on the hybrid meeting BYOD features of the CP960, and we kind of went in a little bit more detail. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you can use this IP endpoint with your PC on a soft phone. You can obviously register it to IPPBX, but you can also tether it by Bluetooth to a cell phone even. So if you need to transition a phone call from a cell phone to the conference phone, you can do so. If you want to connect a web meeting platform by way of the conference phone for a larger meeting space, you're absolutely allowed to do so. The point is that the device is supportive of that, and it's a BYOD thing. Bring your own to the table, and the CP960 will meet the requirements and should be able to integrate seamlessly. For you service provider customers out there in the world, this CP960 920 tandem does provision and can be drop shipped. Whether or not you use the Yealink RPS or one of our services here at 888 VoIP is up to you, or even your own server. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the process is the same as we see for IP phone. When the order is placed, the MAC address information is captured so that profiles can be created and saved, stored on a server, and then pulled down by the phone. That is absolutely supported by the 920 and 960. I want to just touch on the price points comparatively to the different players in the market space today. Yannick, Polycom, as you may know, has a pretty diverse set of conference phones out there today. But as is true very often with Polycom, we see a little bit higher price points comparatively to what Yealink has. So aside from the feature set and the brand, aside from the feature set, the brand awareness and the quality, we have to look at the price, and we can see comparatively to others in the space, at least one of the more popular options, we are very well ahead of the competition from a price perspective. So that was comparing competing prices. Let's take a look at competing feature sets. So we'll first start by looking at this breakdown of the IP7000 versus the CP920. There are some carryovers, but you'll see there's some difference in parity between how we pair with a PC by either the 2.5 millimeter jack or audio cable with Polycom, or by Bluetooth, simply with the 920. Then we go down the line a little bit and we see all the standard features that come with the CP920 versus all the standard features or the non-standard features of the IP7000. So that would be call recording, PSTN access without a gateway, hybrid UC integration, meeting integration, built-in Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So you get more for your money. That's what this slide is saying. If you get the CP960 in an office for a customer, they're getting more for their money than they would for an IP7000. Let's expand upon this. There's more than just the IP7000 out there in the space from Polycom. There's also the Trio8800. It's a popular phone. It's a good looking phone. It's been in the space for about a year now and has had pretty solid adoption. But there are some crucial differentiators between the two that I think gives Yealink the nod. So we see standard pickup range is about the same. The first thing that jumps to me is the fact that you get the wireless microphone pod standard with the CP960 if you get that bundle, whereas you don't have that option with the Trio. The multi-party conferencing is the same, but as we work our way down, we see that the integration piece is a little bit different for the CP960 and the Trio8800. So that is in regards to video conferencing. Yannick has their own video conferencing solution that they offer. If you were to sell a CP960 to a customer, and then 6 months down the line they want to integrate a Yealink video conferencing system, that CP960 will fully integrate with that existing or that new video system seamlessly. It is on the roadmap. I do want to point out, it is on the roadmap for next year that Yealink will introduce a SFB or Skype for Business version of this conference phone as well. So here are a couple additional reviews that were sent to Yealink after their initial release of some beta product. I think it goes without saying that the design, especially coming from the CP860, is quite stunning, quite radical in the way that it transitioned from the previous to the new. And it seems as if with this particular review, that point wasn't lost, but also the fact that it can be so widely used and is so flexible. So that was from Comms Trader. Another review from Which VoIP, again, touching on the style, but if we look at the overall ratings, look at voice quality, performance, ease of use, features, they're all 5 stars except for the install. And if I ever have an install that goes 5 stars, I would like to know. But anyhow, the initial review of the product was great. And as we've released this product to the channel, we've seen the same come back. So with that, I kind of want to wrap up on this slide and just reassert the points that we made throughout the presentation. First and foremost, we have solutions to cover any type of meeting space, whether that's a meeting room, huddle room, small conference room, mid-sized conference room, large-sized conference room, shouldn't matter. The CP series from Yealink should have a model to fit the need. And these devices, they were designed with innovation in mind. I think we saw that as we looked at some of the features and some of the reasoning behind the development of the technology, but innovation was at the forefront, and we see this expressed through their quality of voice pickup and range. And then the ease of use factor, the Pentagon meeting room and the hybrid UC feature drives the adoption of the customer, forces the use of the product in as many ways as possible, and allows the customer to see the ROI of their investment. then lastly, the RPS and mass deployment scenarios. If you guys have opportunities where you're doing mass deployments, Yannick does have their own provisioning servers. 888 VoIP offers provisioning as a service as well. But the point is, these CP series phones fall in line with that process and will fully support that as well. All right, so with that, if there are any questions that anyone has by chat, by all means, lay it on me. Be happy to address them. I might not get to all of them, but I would like to at least take them all down and see, if not right away, but after the fact, we can address them. Also, too, as a thank you to you all for making time today, we will offer any participant a free shipping on their order of a CP920 or 960. Doesn't have to be just a 920 or 960. If you are ordering other product on that, you can certainly take advantage of the promo. All right, guys, so that just about does it for me. We're ever going to do a phone giveaway. We'll take a look at who all attended, probably draw the name from a hat, and send you all out an email after the fact as a way to say thanks. And again, if there's any questions at this time, please let me know. So a question came in, does this work with 3CX? Yes, the CP960, 920 are supported and integrated with 3CX. Question came in, does the CP960 support 4 wireless microphones? Unfortunately, at this time, no. It is only 2. Question came up about pricing. Pricing has been released to the channel. If you are working with 888 VoIP today, I would encourage you to call your rep on this service provider or value-added reseller team. We can get you a breakout of that. Good question came up. If we're using the wireless microphone pods, do the microphones on the base unit mute? And the question is, or the answer is no. All the microphones will work in tandem with each other. However, if you need to mute the conference phone, but you only have the microphone pod in front of you, you can mute the entire phone and all of the pods with the pod. There is a LED touch mute button. So if you have a CP960 that you bought without the wireless microphone pods, if you were to buy that originally and you decide or you come to find out that maybe we should have gotten the wireless pods as well, you can buy just the pods after the fact. We're working on building up stock here at 888, but by design, you should be able to introduce pods to the 960 after the fact if they weren't purchased originally. So the CP, we'll revisit a couple things. A question came in about the POTS lines integration. Specifically for the CP920, there is a single line analog adapter that comes with that device that will allow the bridging between SIP and analog. But if you're talking about the CP960, you can use an FXO gateway, but it would be a separate appliance if you have an environment where we have only copper lines coming in. A question came up about the OS version of Android, about its age. I asked the same question when we first saw this product be released. The answer was essentially that we're not going to get out front of Android. We're going to let Android release its new stuff, figure out what works and what doesn't work, and then we'll probably only ever stay a version behind at best. They did that as a way to kind of protect themselves just from any sort of issues, whatever you can imagine might come of that. But from a management perspective and from a manufacturing perspective, it was told to me that that was the decision made by Yealink. How are the pods powered? Good question. So if you buy CP960 with the microphone pods, there's a charging deck that comes with the two. It's connected by micro USB into the conference phone itself. I believe it's a lithium-ion battery, so you do get some run time after the charge. Another question came in, are the batteries replaceable? I do not believe they are. They're not like a AA or AAA type of battery. I think they're enclosed within the phone or the pod. Question came in, can you deploy your own Android apps on the phone? Yes, if you had Android developer apps, you can certainly do that. Integrating apps to the CP960 isn't maybe as simple as just going through the Google Play Store, but that's by design. Yannick didn't want end users and non-admin types to self-manage, essentially, the apps, or lack thereof, the apps on the phones. So if you want to introduce an application, whether it be Android developer or otherwise, you can all do that through the provisioning template. All right, so by my time, I see that it's 2:40 here in the East. We'll hang around for another couple minutes if there's anything lingering that you guys have questions about. But with that, we'll call it a webinar. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to meet with us. I hope it was informative. If you have questions and follow-up, you can reach out to your sales rep over here at 888 VoIP. We'll be happy to help you with any questions, quotes, or needs that you might have. Thank you so much again for your time, for being an 888 VoIP customer. I hope everyone has a great day.